What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the vlog. This is day number 3 of my 3-week trip in Dallas. We're currently up $3,160 on the trip, and we're only 2 days in. If you guys want to watch the first vlog, click up here. And without further ado, we're going to jump into the 1-2 cash game in Poker House. Let's go. Welcome back, everybody. We're going to hop right into the action. We are into the 1-2 game for $500, which is the max. Immediately getting involved when we look down at pocket queens. We're in the cutoff. The under the gun player limps, and the action folds to me. I'm definitely going to be raising. I make it $15 to go, and the small blind and under the gun players call. So we're 3 ways to the flop, which gives us an overpair 9-6-4 with 2 diamonds, and the action checks over to me. Definitely going to be betting here. I decide on a size of $15. I wish I would have gone a little bit bigger. Our hand is pretty vulnerable to overcards, flush draws, and straight draws, and we don't have a queen of spades in our hand. So I think a bet of 30 to 40 is better in this case, but the small blind decides to go for the good old check raise, and it's a big one, $70. A pretty massive size here, and when the under the gun folds, the action's over to me. I look at the small blind stack, and notice he only has about $150 total. In that case, there's only one thing for me to do. I'm not going to be folding here. I don't see the point in calling either. I just want to commit my stack for $150. If the turn is an action killer, then we might not get all the money, so I rip it all in for $150. And he pretty quickly puts in the call. The turn comes the 7 of diamonds, river 3 of diamonds, and he shows pocket jacks. A little surprised he didn't 3-bet that one pre, but I mean, it would have ended up the same way. I would have jammed, he would have called. So happy to take down a $350 pot the first hand of the night. Pocket jacks didn't work very well for the small blind, but hopefully they work better for us. We look down at pocket jacks. In the low jack, there's 2 limps. I make it $20 to go, and we end up getting 3 callers, the button, and both of the early position limpers. 4 ways to a flop here, which gives us another overpair, but it's a wet board, 8-7-5 with 2 hearts. We don't have any hearts in our hand. Definitely going to be betting here when it checks over to me, and this time I do decide to go for a bigger sizing, which I love. I make it $50 into 80. And the action folds to the under the gun player, who decides to go for the good old check min raise to $100. Pretty strange play here. Obviously never going to fold. It's just a matter of do we want to 3-bet? And I don't think so. I think we want to let our opponent keep all of his bluffs in there with flush draws and straight draws and random hands. So when the player in between folds, I decide to stick in the call here, and we're off to a turn, hoping for it to be clean. It's the ace of spades. Pretty interesting card. It shouldn't hit my opponent too well unless he had something like ace x of hearts. But when he slows down and checks, I feel like we have the best hand here a lot. I'm not sure if we should bet for protection or check back. In the moment, I decided to check back and see if my opponent wanted to blast off on the river. So when I check, the river is the 9 of clubs, a pretty wet card. Any 6 now makes a straight, but all the flush draws miss. And now the pot's $280, and the under the gun player decides to bet out for $150. And now we have a decision to make. Obviously never going to be raising here, so we can take that out of the equation. At this point, it's just a matter of calling or folding. And here's the thing. Both the flush draws miss. We don't have a heart. The opponent's line doesn't make too much sense. What would he want to check min raise on the flop? I guess it could be something like a flopped straight that he just decided to slow play the turn. When the opponent checks the turn, I don't think he's going to have many 2 pairs, sets, or straights. So I think this is going to be weighted towards 1 pair, like an 8 or a 7. Or just a missed flush draw that's trying to buy it here on the river. And the fact that we don't have the jack of hearts could make it more likely that he would check raise us with like queen jack of hearts, king jack of hearts, jack 9 of hearts, hopefully not jack 10 of hearts. But in the end, I just don't believe this guy, and I stick in the call, and he shows us an 8 and a king. King 8 of spades. We have the best hand, we turn it over, and our opponent says nice call. I'm glad we could find it on the river there. When the line doesn't make sense, most of the time you end up putting in the call. And there the line was pretty strange. I guess for his hand, check raising top pair, turning a flush draw and slowing down. I don't really get the blast on the river because you have showdown value. But anyway, we find a good call here on the river. And we're going to scoop a $580 pot. So far the session is going pretty nice for us. In this next one, we have the beautiful suited connector, 10-9 of diamonds. I'm under the gun. I'm going to make it $15 to go. And we end up getting 3 callers here, so we're going to a flop, which is pretty good for us. We don't flop a pair, but we do flop a flush draw. Ace 7-3 with 2 diamonds. The big blind checks to me. There's 2 players behind me. I think I can mix between betting and checking here, but with 2 players behind, I'm going to start with a check. And when the hijack puts in a bet of $25, then the cutoff calls and the big blind calls. You could say, I'm getting a great price, I'm going to stick in a call, but we only have 10 high. And remember, we raised under the gun, so we have the biggest range advantage here, meaning we have all the ace-king, all the ace-queen, all the pocket aces. Our opponents are most likely going to 3-bet that pre-flop, so it's harder for them to have those strong aces. And we do have a lot of equity. Obviously, any diamond gives us a flush here, but we just have 10 high. And all the dead money in the middle, I'm going to go for a check raise. I make it $110, trying to charge out any weak aces any middling pocket pairs, a pair of sevens, a pair of threes. And if we get called, hopefully we can spike a diamond on the turn or the river. Luckily, the first player in the hijack decides to put in the fold. That's relieving because he had the strongest range betting out first. The cutoff folds and the big blind folds. So we get this one through. Picking up a nice little pot with just 10 high. I'm glad I decided to go for the check raise there because let's say I called and the turn was a blank like a king of hearts. It'd be very tough to navigate and I'd probably just have to fold the turn. I like how I took my position into consideration, realizing that I have all the strongest hands on this board. Our stack is looking pretty nice. We got it up to $1,050. Here in Texas, you do a double board hold'em bomb pot every dealer change, and we get into one here with ace 10. I'm not going to go over it. It wasn't too crazy, but I flopped top pair on both, and we got into a three-way pot. I ended up getting scooped by both the other players with quads and two pair. So we lose about $150 there, but we're going to move on to the next one where we look down at pocket eights. There's two limps to me. I'm in the small blind and I make it $20. Definitely out of position. You should be going $25 to $30. Also, raise sizes in Texas should just be bigger. You need to exploit because players call so often, and when you have your best hands, you want to get max value. This was only my second day in Texas, so I didn't know this quite yet. Either way, I make it $20, but this time, thank the Lord, we only get one caller. We're playing a heads-up pot in Texas. That's more rare than a royal flush. The flop now comes 10-4-4 rainbow. Pretty good for us. Even though there's an overcard, our 8 should be the best hand here almost always. But there's something I need to tell you about this hand. The player on the button, before he called, said, "This is a bad call." And this player has been running hot. He's been drilling every flop, stacking people left and right. So when he says this is a bad call, I'm going to check it over to him and see what he does. And he decides to bet out here. He makes it $15. Obviously, I'm never going to fold. I just stick in the call. Turn is the king of spades. Shouldn't really change too much about the hand. Obviously, it's a bad card because it's over our 8. But the opponent shouldn't have too much king X in his range that I would want to bet flop unless it's a hand like king 10 or king 4, which we were both basically dead already on the flop. So I check it over to him. And he bets out for $40. I think this opponent is taking his image into consideration. He said this was a bad call. He's been running hot. He has position on me. And my line so far has looked very weak. Just check calling the flop, checking to him on the turn. So when he bets out for $40 here, I think pocket eights are going to be still ahead a lot of his range. And like I said, I think he might just be pulling a bluff here. So I put in the call. And the river is the 5 of spades. Brings in the backdoor flush, but it shouldn't be that necessary in the hand. I check it over to him, and he snap bets $100 into 164. I'm going into the tank here, and I think I'm still going to go with my read on the turn that he's taking advantage of his image of running hot. Some people would think, like, he's running hot. Why would you call? But, guys, they can't have it every single time. I got to keep him honest. I put in the call, and he shows us none other. The king 4 of hearts. He flopped trips on me and turned a boat, so I guess this guy is running pretty hot. We're going to forget about this one and move on. Yuppers. Like I said earlier, there is a double board hold'em bomb pot every dealer change. We get into one here with queen, jack, offsuit. Here are the flops. One board comes queen, queen 10. Amazing. The other board is queen high too. So we have top pair on one and trips on the other. The action checks to me. I'm going to bet $15. Luckily, 3 players put in the call. This is looking amazing for us. It's pretty tough to have us beat. The turns now come a 10 and an 8. The action checks over to me once again. I'm going to start pumping more money in the middle here. Most of the time, hold'em bomb pots will end in a chop. So the goal is to build the pot so you can get profit when you chop. Obviously, scooping would be amazing. I bet out for $65, and only the button player puts in the call. I have to assume that the opponent has us beat on the other board with an 8 or maybe pocket 5s. He could have a 10, but I don't think we're going to get all of it with a 10. The rivers now come the 3 of clubs and the 7 of diamonds. He only has $200 left in his stack. I'm going to try and push him off an 8. I don't know, maybe we get called by a worse hand on both. I jam for 200 effective, and the opponent snap calls. We turn over our queen jack, and he turns over 10-9. We're going to scoop both boards. You don't really scoop hold'em bomb pots too often, but when you do, it feels really nice. I am a little surprised that the opponent decided to stick in the call there, but I'm not complaining at all. In the next hand here, we decide to put on the button straddle with ace-jack offsuit. Here in Texas, if you straddle on the button, you get ultimate last action pre-flop no matter what. There's 3 limps over to me. I decide to raise it up to $30, and the middle position player, big blind, and small blind put in the call. So we have 4 ways to a flop here, which is 10, deuce, 3 with 2 clubs. We do have the ace of clubs, giving us 2 overcards and a backdoor nut flush draw. But when the action checks to me, I think I'm just going to check this one back. I don't feel like betting into 3 players with just ace high. We could have the best hand a lot, and I want to see a free turn card. Maybe we can pick up more equity. So that's what I do. I check back, and the turn does give us more equity. It's the 9 of clubs. We have the ace high flush draw. When the action checks over to me, you could argue to go for a bet here, but like I said on the flop, ace jack high could be good a lot of the time. Also, we want to realize our equity. Would hate to get check raised off of our nut flush draw. So I decide to check it back, and we see the river, which isn't a club, but it's a jack of diamonds. It improves us to top on the river, and the small blind now leads out for $25. The action folds all the way over to me. We just have top. We do have the ace of clubs. Obviously, we're never going to fold this river for this price, but the question is, should we raise? I thought about this spot for a while, and I think raising could be fine here, especially with the ace of clubs. We block a lot of the flushes, but I think we should still just put in the call here. It's going to be tough to give value unless the opponent has a worse jack, maybe a non-believing 10, but I believe he'd bet the turn with a 10, so I'm not really sure. Maybe he rivered a straight or some weird 2-pair. For that reason, I decide to just put in the call, and he shows us the good old ace-7 offsuit. We were good regardless of the river, and I'm not sure what that bet was from the small blind on the river, but we're going to scoop that pot. Real quickly, I wanted to do a quick announcement, and that is that I will be hosting a private game on Club GG every Thursday night at 5 p.m. Pacific time. We'll be playing a 1-2 cash game, splashing around, having a good time. So go click the description for more info, and I hope I see you there next Thursday. Moving on to the next hand, I have ace-10 offsuit on the cutoff. There's 2 limps to me. I make it $20, and we get a call from the big blind and the button. We're 3 ways to a monotone flop here. Ace, queen, 5, all hearts. When the big blind checks here, I think betting small or checking is going to be fine in between 2 opponents. This time I decide to go for a check, and the button checks it back, looking to see no heart on the turn, which comes the 4 of spades. Now the big blind decides to bet out for $15. It's a pretty small bet compared to the size of the pot. Our hand is definitely under-repped by checking the flop, so I could go for a raise here to try and charge all the draws, maybe a worse ace or a queen, but I decided to just stick in the call here, and the button puts in the call as well. I do think raising this turn would be beneficial. There's so much we could get value from on this board. The river's a pretty big brick. It comes the jack of diamonds. The only thing this really changes would be maybe a hand like queen jack with the jack of hearts. But when the big blind bets out for $40, I'm definitely never going to fold here, like I said. My hand is still under-repped. I don't think we can ever go for a raise here. I stick in the call. The button gets out of the way, and the big blind shows us king 10 of diamonds. So she rivered Broadway. Pretty wild. No hearts in her hand. Binked the river. Jack of diamonds, Broadway. Moving on here, we have a beautiful hand, ace queen of spades. And let me tell you one thing, the more you play in Texas, the bigger your raises are going to get. This session was a little over a month ago, and now I've been playing in Texas for a little while. There's 2 limps over to me, and I raise it up to $25. The under the gun player and the button player put in the call. Once again, going multi-way to a flop, which is really good for us. Ace, king, 4, 2 hearts with 1 spade. We have top pair, top kicker with a backdoor nut flush draw. The under the gun player checks over to me. I'm going to bet out for $30. The button player gets out of the way, and the under the gun player decides to stick in the call. The turn gives us trips. The ace of diamonds. A really good card because obviously if our opponent has an ace, they're going to have a very tough time folding, and also if they have a king, when the top card pairs, it allows them to get a little bit more sticky, making it less likely that we actually have an ace. I'm definitely going to try and get more money in the middle here. I don't need to bet too big, I don't need to bet too small. I go around half pot for $65, but it's unfortunate when they decide to fold. We can't get paid here with our ace queen, but I can't complain. We're having a pretty good session so far. Up nearly $600. There's 2 more hands I want to go over from this session. I look down at 6-5 of hearts on the button straddle, the big blind and the small blind limp. I could go for a raise here, and I'm a little surprised that I didn't, but I decided to take a flop in position. I check my option, and the flop is very favorable for us. It gives us a pair and an open-ended straight draw, 8-7-5. It does have a heart on board, so we do have a backdoor flush draw as well. And now the big blind decides to lead out for pot, $15. And the big blind puts in the call. I'm obviously not going to go anywhere, but could I apply pressure to better hands and put in a raise here? Sometimes I think I could, but I just put in the call here. And we're off to a turn card, which gives us even more outs. It's the deuce of hearts, now improving us to a flush draw. So any 4, any 9, any 5, or any heart. Now the small blind does not slow down. He bets out for $45. That's 75% of the pot, another huge bet. The big blind gets out of the way. When this turn card comes, I have no intentions of folding. I think if we didn't have a pair of fives, I could go for a raise like on the flop or on the turn. But I think since we have showdown value, we should just stick in the call here and maybe try to get to showdown, obviously see the river card and improve. So I put in the call. We're looking for a 9, a 4, or a heart. And the river gives us 2 of those. It's the 4 of hearts. We hit our straight and our flush. Now, unfortunately, the small blind decides to slow down and check. At this point, I'm putting him on top pair. Why would he lead the flop and lead the turn and then check the river? He's got to obviously be scared of that river. I'm not going to be checking back, that's for sure. I decide to bet $75 for value. Try and target this top pair, maybe an 8, maybe a sticky 7. After some thought, unfortunately for him, he puts in the call. We show him the 6-5 of hearts and he mucks. What a river. Thank you, dealer. We're going to take down a really nice pot there. I assume the opponent had an 8 that just didn't want to fold the river. So nice to get paid there. And we're going to move on to the last hand of the night where we look down at another connector, but this time it's not suited and it's pretty ugly. 5-4 offsuit. Again, we're on the button straddle, and there's 3 limps to me. This one, definitely not going to be raising. I want to try to see a flop in position. I decide to check my option, and the flop, once again, gives us a big draw. It's Queen 6-3 rainbow. We're open-ended to the nuts. The action checks over to me, and I could see a free turn card here, but I like to apply pressure. It's a very dry board. It's going to be hard for the other players to continue if they didn't catch a piece. So I decide to bet out for $15, trying to get folds with my 5 high. Unfortunately, we get 2 callers, so hopefully we can bink this turn. Nope, it's the 3 of hearts. The under the gun decides to lead now for $16. This bet is really strange. Why would she want to lead on this turn card? Sure, she could have trips, but for some reason, when people lead really small like this, it just seems very weak to me. So when the other player folds, I decide to go for more pressure, decide to tell the story. I'm the one who checked my button straddle. I had the most 3s in my range, so I decide to raise it up to $55, and the opponent goes into the tank for a little while before mucking pocket 4s face up. So really nice to get a fold there from a hand that had us crushed, and we're going to take down an $81 pot to end the night with just 5 high. Let's go. That's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. We cashed out with $1,265. We were in for $500, so that's a profit of $765. We played for roughly 5.5 hours, and afterwards, I jumped into a $200 tourney, busted that pretty quickly, and then ended up just going home. Still got a lot of sessions to go through from this trip, and I'm excited to share it with you guys. I'll see you in the next video.